Have you ever woken up in the dead of night, only to see something that shouldn't be there? In this video, I'll share the terrifying experience my girlfriend and I had when we both saw the same eerie figure standing at the foot of our bed. What makes it even stranger? We both had the exact same dream, saying the exact same words. Can you imagine the fear of realizing you're not alone in your own bedroom? Join us as we dive into the chilling details of that night, our desperate search for answers, and the lingering fear that still haunts us. Why did we both see the same thing? And what does it mean? If you're fascinated by real-life horror stories and the unexplainable, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to turn on notifications so you never miss another spine-tingling tale. Let's uncover the mystery together. A few weeks ago, something strange happened that I can't quite shake off. Let me start from the beginning. My girlfriend, Sarah, and I have been together for a couple of years. We often sleep together at my place, a small but cozy apartment in a quiet neighborhood. We have a pretty solid routine, and most nights are calm and uneventful. Our bedroom is our sanctuary. It's a peaceful space with soft lighting, warm blankets, and our favorite photos on the walls. We usually wind down by watching a bit of TV or reading. Sarah loves her mystery novels, and I'm more into sci-fi. It's our way of relaxing after a long day. Before bed, we always make sure the apartment is locked up tight. I check the doors, and Sarah checks the windows. It's a habit we've developed to make sure we feel safe and secure. After that, we brush our teeth, talk about our day, and then finally crawl into bed. We have a queen-sized bed with the comfiest mattress you can imagine. Sarah always insists on having an extra blanket, even in the summer, so she can wrap herself up like a burrito. I usually tease her about it, but secretly, I find it adorable. Once we're in bed, it doesn't take long for us to drift off. The soft hum of the city outside and the gentle glow from our bedside lamps create the perfect atmosphere for sleep. Most nights, I fall asleep to the sound of Sarah's steady breathing beside me. It's comforting, and it helps me relax. That night started like any other. We had our usual evening routine, and everything felt normal. We were both exhausted from a long week, so we turned in early. Sarah fell asleep almost immediately, but I stayed up for a bit, scrolling through my phone. Eventually, I started to feel my eyelids getting heavy. I turned off my phone, kissed Sarah on the forehead, and settled into bed. The room was dark and quiet, just the way we liked it. I felt completely at ease as I drifted off to sleep. Sometime during the night, I was jolted awake by Sarah's voice. "What are you doing?" she asked, her tone urgent and confused. It was so out of the blue that it startled me. Sarah sometimes talks in her sleep, but this felt different. I sat up and looked at her, trying to figure out what was going on. She was half awake, looking around the room with wide eyes. "Yeah, I thought I saw someone at the end of the bed," as she mumbled, still groggy. I glanced around, but didn't see anything. "It must have been a dream," I said, trying to reassure both of us. Sarah nodded and lay back down, and I did the same. We tried to brush it off as just one of those weird sleep moments. But it left me feeling uneasy. I couldn't shake the feeling that something was off. Eventually, I managed to fall back asleep, telling myself it was nothing to worry about. An hour later, I woke up again, this time with a jolt. There, at the foot of the bed, I saw a figure standing. The sheets were twisted around them, almost up to their neck. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a wave of panic. "What are you doing?" I blurted out, my voice shaky. In an instant, I was fully awake, and Sarah was shaking me. "You were dreaming," as she said, her voice filled with concern. I looked around, and the figure was gone. It had just been a dream. But the weird part? It was the same dream Sarah had described earlier. We lay there in the dark, both of us wide awake now. We couldn't understand how we both had the same dream, seeing the same figure, and saying the same words. The sense of normalcy and comfort we usually felt in our bedroom was replaced by a deep, unsettling fear. And from that night on, things were never quite the same. That night, everything seemed perfectly normal until I was suddenly awakened by Sarah's voice. "What are you doing?" she asked, sounding both urgent and confused. Her words cut through the silence of the room, jolting me awake. I turned to her, still groggy and disoriented, trying to make sense of what was happening. Sarah was sitting up in bed, her eyes wide and darting around the room. She looked genuinely frightened. "What's going on?" I asked, my voice thick with sleep. She glanced at me and then back to the foot of the bed. "Yeah, I thought I saw someone standing there," as she said, her voice trembling slightly. I immediately felt a chill run down my spine. I looked to where she was pointing, but all I saw were the shadows cast by the dim light from the street outside. "Are you sure?" I asked, trying to keep my voice calm. She nodded slowly, but then shook her head as if trying to clear it. "I don't know. Maybe I was just dreaming," as she said, lying back down. We both lay there for a moment, the silence heavy around us. I could tell Sarah was still shaken, and to be honest, so was I. But we both tried to brush it off. "You know you sometimes talk in your sleep," I said, attempting to lighten the mood. "And maybe it was just one of those nights." Sarah nodded, but I could see the uncertainty in her eyes. "Yeah, maybe," as she said softly. We lay there in the dark, trying to convince ourselves that it was nothing more than a dream or a figment of our imagination. The room seemed to grow colder, and the shadows seemed darker, but we tried to ignore it. After a while, we managed to settle back down. I wrapped my arm around Sarah, hoping to provide some comfort. "It's okay," I whispered. "It was just a dream." She nodded again, and slowly, her breathing began to even out as she drifted back to sleep. I lay awake a bit longer, my mind racing. I couldn't shake the image of someone standing at the foot of our bed. But I kept telling myself it was nothing, just a trick of the light or a half-formed dream. Eventually, exhaustion took over, and I too fell back asleep. But the peace didn't last long. About an hour later, I woke up again. This time, it was my turn to see something that shouldn't have been there. At the foot of the bed, I saw a figure, its form wrapped in our twisted bed sheets, almost up to its neck. My heart pounded in my chest, and I felt a surge of fear. "What are you doing?" I heard myself say, the words coming out almost instinctively. The figure didn't move, and for a moment, I couldn't either. I was paralyzed with fear, unable to look away. Then suddenly, I was shaken awake by Sarah. "You were dreaming," as she said, her voice filled with concern. I looked around the room, my heart still racing. The figure was gone, and the room was silent again. I sat up, trying to catch my breath, and then it hit me. I had said the exact same words Sarah had said earlier. We had both seen the same thing, and we had both reacted in the same way. We lay there, wide awake and staring at the ceiling. "That was so weird," I whispered. Sarah nodded, her eyes wide with fear. "What does it mean?" she asked. I didn't have an answer. We tried to go back to sleep, but the sense of unease lingered. It was hard to shake the feeling that something wasn't right. We spent the rest of the night in a restless half-sleep, jumping at every little sound. The comfort and normalcy we usually felt in our bedroom were gone, replaced by a lingering sense of dread. And as the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains, we knew that something had changed. An hour after Sarah had first woken me up, I found myself drifting back into an uneasy sleep. The room was silent, the kind of silence that felt heavy and oppressive. I was trying to convince myself that everything was normal, that it had all been a dream, but the unease lingered. Suddenly, I jolted awake again. This time, my heart was pounding before I even opened my eyes. I had the distinct feeling that something was wrong, that there was someone in the room with us. Slowly, I opened my eyes and looked towards the foot of the bed. There, standing in the dim light, was a figure. It was tall and shrouded in our bed sheets, which were twisted and wrapped around its body all the way up to its neck. My breath caught in my throat, and I felt a cold wave of fear wash over me. The figure was completely still, just standing there, watching us. I couldn't move, couldn't speak. My mind raced with confusion and terror. Was I still dreaming? Or was this real? I wanted to wake Sarah, to make sure I wasn't imagining things, but I was frozen with fear. The room felt colder, and the shadows seemed to creep closer. Finally, I found my voice. What are you doing?" I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. The figure didn't respond, didn't move. It was as if my words had no effect. The silence in the room was deafening, and my fear grew with every passing second. In that moment, Sarah shook me awake. "You were dreaming," as she said, her voice filled with concern. I blinked and looked around the room. The figure was gone, and the room was back to its usual quiet. My heart was still racing, and I felt disoriented and confused. "I saw it too," I said, my voice shaking. There was someone standing at the foot of the bed, wrapped in the sheets. Sarah's eyes widened, and she looked even more scared. "That's exactly what I saw," as she whispered. "And you said the same thing I did. What are you doing?" We sat there in the dark, trying to process what had just happened. It was eerie and unsettling that we both had the same dream, saw the same figure, and said the same words. It felt like more than just a coincidence. The room felt heavy with a sense of something unexplainable. I tried to shake off the fear, but it clung to me. "It must be stress," I suggested, trying to find a rational explanation. "Maybe we've been watching too many scary movies." But deep down, I wasn't convinced. The experience felt too real, too vivid to be just a product of our imaginations. Sarah nodded, but I could tell she was just as unconvinced. "Maybe," as she said quietly, lying back down. I followed suit, but neither of us could fall back asleep. We lay there, wide awake, listening to every creak and rustle in the apartment. The feeling of being watched didn't go away. Eventually, the first light of dawn began to filter through the curtains. The pale morning light made the room feel a little safer, but the unease lingered. We got up, bleary-eyed and exhausted, and tried to go about our day as normally as possible. But the memory of that night stayed with us. We couldn't shake the feeling that something was wrong, that we had experienced something beyond a simple dream. The shared vision had left a mark on us, a lingering fear that hung over us every night when we went to bed. From that point on, our bedroom never felt quite the same. The sense of comfort and safety was replaced by a constant undercurrent of fear and unease. And every time we turned off the lights, we couldn't help but wonder if we'd see that figure standing at the foot of our bed again. The next morning, Sarah and I sat at the kitchen table, nursing our cups of coffee. Neither of us had slept well after what had happened, and the exhaustion was evident on our faces. We hadn't talked much yet, both of us still trying to process the events of the night. I broke the silence first. "Sarah, we need to talk about what happened last night," I said, my voice low and serious. She looked up at me, her eyes filled with a mixture of fear and curiosity. "I know. It was so weird. I can't stop thinking about it," as she replied. I took a deep breath. "When you woke me up the first time, you said you saw someone standing at the end of the bed. And then I had the exact same dream. The same figure, the same words, everything. How is that even possible?" Sarah shivered slightly and wrapped her hands around her coffee mug for warmth. "I don't know," as she said softly. But it felt so real. I've never experienced anything like that before. It's like we were both seeing the same thing at the same time." The realization hit us both hard. We had shared a dream, an experience that was too similar to be just a coincidence. It was eerie, unsettling, and it left us both feeling exposed and vulnerable. The idea that our minds could be so connected in such a terrifying way was hard to wrap our heads around. "Do you think it was just a coincidence?" I asked, though I already knew the answer. Sarah shook her head slowly. No, I don't think so. It was too specific. The figure, the sheets, even the words we said, it was all the same. A cold chill ran down my spine. And what does that mean? Are we haunted or something? I tried to laugh, but it came out forced and hollow. Sarah didn't laugh. I don't know, she said again. But it scares me. I'm afraid to go to sleep now. We sat in silence for a while, each lost in our own thoughts. The apartment felt different, less like a home and more like a place where something sinister had happened. The comfort and safety we usually felt here were overshadowed by a growing sense of dread. Maybe we should try to find out more about shared dreams, I suggested. There has to be some explanation, right? Maybe it's stress or something psychological. Sarah nodded, though I could see the doubt in her eyes. Yeah, maybe, as she said quietly. We spent the rest of the day researching shared dreams and paranormal experiences. We found plenty of theories, but none of them provided a satisfactory explanation. The more we read, the more uneasy we felt. It seemed like we were diving deeper into a mystery with no clear answers. That night, we tried to keep ourselves busy, anything to avoid thinking about going to bed. We watched movies, played games, and talked about anything but the dream. But as the hours passed, the inevitable loomed closer. We couldn't stay awake forever. When it was finally time to go to bed, we were both on edge. We left the lights on, hoping it would provide some comfort. As we lay there, I held Sarah close, both of us wide awake and listening to the silence. The fear of seeing that figure again was overwhelming. Neither of us slept much that night. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw the figure standing at the foot of the bed. I could feel Sarah trembling beside me, and I knew she was experiencing the same thing. The shared dream had left a scar, one that wouldn't heal easily. In the days that followed, the fear didn't go away. We were constantly on edge, jumping at every little noise. The comfort of our home had been shattered, replaced by a lingering sense of unease. And the worst part was, we still didn't know why it had happened or if it would happen again. Determined to find an explanation for our shared dream, Sarah and I decided to dive deeper into the mystery. We began by searching online for similar experiences. It turns out, shared dreams weren't completely unheard of, but the specific details of ours were what made it so unsettling. We found a few forums and discussion boards where people shared their own strange dream experiences. Some mentioned seeing figures or feeling a presence in their rooms, but none of the stories matched ours exactly. The more we read, the more questions we had. Why did we both see the same figure? Why did we both say the same thing? Sarah suggested we look into sleep disorders. We found articles about sleep paralysis, which described seeing figures while being unable to move. But that didn't quite fit our experience either. We had both been fully awake, and the figure had appeared in our dreams, not during a paralysis episode. The lack of answers was frustrating. Next, we decided to consult with some experts. We reached out to a sleep specialist and scheduled an appointment. The doctor listened to our story with interest, but ultimately, he didn't have a definitive explanation. He suggested that it could be due to stress or a coincidental alignment of our sleep cycles. But his answers felt unsatisfying and left us with more doubts than before. Feeling even more desperate, we turned to a psychologist who specialized in dream analysis. She listened to our story and offered a different perspective. According to her, shared dreams could sometimes occur due to a deep emotional connection between two people. She suggested that our close relationship might have caused our subconscious minds to sync up in a strange way. While her explanation was interesting, it didn't fully address the eerie specifics of our shared dream. We left her office feeling more confused than ever. The fear that had started as a small knot in our stomachs was growing into a constant presence. We were haunted by the lack of answers and the possibility that something truly strange was happening to us. We even considered consulting with a paranormal investigator, but the idea felt too extreme. We weren't ready to admit that what we experienced might be supernatural. Instead, we continued our own research, hoping to find a logical explanation. But as days turned into weeks, our search yielded nothing concrete. The more we failed to find answers, the more our fear grew. Every night, we went to bed with a sense of dread, wondering if the figure would return. We kept the lights on and tried to stay positive, but the anxiety was always there, lurking in the back of our minds. The shared dream had shaken us to our core. It wasn't just about the figure anymore, it was the fear of the unknown, the realization that our minds had experienced something we couldn't explain. We felt vulnerable, exposed to a reality we didn't understand. Our relationship began to feel the strain. The constant fear and lack of sleep were taking their toll. We were both on edge, snapping at each other over little things. The bedroom, once a place of comfort and safety, had become a source of anxiety. Finally, we decided to take a break from our investigation. It was consuming us, and we needed to step back and focus on our well-being. We tried to return to our normal routines, but the shadow of that night still loomed over us. The unanswered questions gnawed at our minds, refusing to be ignored. In the end, we realized that we might never find a satisfactory explanation for our shared dream. The fear was something we had to learn to live with, a reminder of the strange and inexplicable things that can happen in life. We tried to move on, but the memory of that figure standing at the foot of our bed was something we would never forget. Even now, weeks after the incident, the fear hasn't gone away. Sarah and I still think about that night constantly. It's hard not to, especially when we lie down to sleep each night. The bedroom, which used to be our sanctuary, now feels like a place of uncertainty and dread. Every time we turn off the lights, there's a moment of hesitation. We both lie there, staring at the foot of the bed, waiting to see if the figure will return. It's become a nightly ritual, this silent vigil, as we brace ourselves for the possibility of seeing that eerie figure again. The experience has left a lasting impact on our sense of safety. We used to feel so comfortable and secure in our home, but now that feeling is tainted. The shadows seem darker, the quiet more oppressive. It's as if the normalcy of our lives has been shattered, and we can't quite put the pieces back together. The fear has seeped into other parts of our lives too. We're more jumpy, more cautious. Every little noise makes us flinch, and we find ourselves constantly looking over our shoulders. It's exhausting, living with this constant undercurrent of anxiety. Despite our best efforts, we haven't been able to find a logical explanation for what happened. We've talked to experts, done our research, and even considered the paranormal, but nothing fits perfectly. The lack of answers only makes the fear worse. It's the not knowing that's the hardest part to deal with. Sarah and I have grown closer through this ordeal, leaning on each other for support. But it's clear that the experience has taken a toll on both of us. We try to keep things light, to focus on the positive, but the memory of that night is always there, lurking in the background. Sometimes, I catch Sarah staring off into space, lost in thought. I know she's thinking about the figure, about the shared dream. I am too. It's hard to move on when something so inexplicable and frightening has happened. It's changed us, in ways big and small. We've tried to make our bedroom feel safe again. We've rearranged the furniture, added more lights, even bought new sheets. But no matter what we do, we can't shake the feeling that something is off. The figure, the shared dream, it's all still too fresh, too real. As much as we want to forget, we know we never will. The fear has become a part of us now, a reminder of the unknown forces that can intrude on our lives. We've accepted that we might never find out what really happened or why we both saw the same disturbing vision. Every night, as we lie in bed, the questions come back. Why us? Why that figure? What did it mean? We've learned to live with the uncertainty, but it's a constant presence, like a shadow that never fully disappears. The unresolved mystery hangs over us, a reminder that some things can't be explained. We've come to terms with the fact that we might never have all the answers. But the fear, the memory of that night, it's something we carry with us, a part of our story that we can't escape. In the end, we've learned to find strength in each other, to face the lingering fear together. The experience has left its mark, but it's also shown us the depth of our bond. And while we may never know the truth, we found a way to keep going, even in the face of the unknown.